They looked at him and saw a snack. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was laughing. The third, and by far the most fatal, was assuming the creature sleeping at his feet was just another piece of cargo. Kevin had been awake for 37 hours when the Vaceri boarding party stomped onto his ship. He'd been running on recycled coffee and spite for most of that time, nursing a throbbing ache in his lower back from sleeping on the floor of the cockpit, because the cot in the cargo bay had finally snapped its last support bracket. The ship was a rust-bucket scow called the Lucky Break, which was the kind of ironic name that stopped being funny about 3 breakdowns ago. It smelled like battery acid and burnt hair, with an underlying note of wet dog that no amount of industrial-grade deodorizer could touch. The docking bay at way station Theta 9 had been a bureaucratic nightmare. 2 hours of form filling, another hour of customs inspection, and then the Vaceri portmaster had decided that Kevin's cargo of medical supplies was insufficiently documented. Which was Vaceri for, "We want a bribe." Kevin didn't have a bribe. What he had was a Class 3 hauling license, a ship held together with welding patches and prayer, and a 13-year-old German Shepherd mix named Duke, who was currently snoring on a flattened cardboard box in the corner of the cockpit. The Vaceri didn't know about Duke yet. They were about to. The portmaster was called something unpronounceable, so Kevin had mentally labeled him Beaky. Beaky stood 7 feet tall, had 4 arms, a beak that looked designed to crack open skulls, and the kind of casual arrogance that came from being born on a planet with 3 times Earth's gravity and an atmosphere thick enough to crush most other species into paste. He was armored in natural chitin that gleamed like polished obsidian, and his species had spent the last 200 years building an interstellar reputation as the apex predators of the galactic arm. Beaky looked at Kevin, 5'9", 160 pounds, dark circles under his eyes, wearing a stained flight jacket and cargo pants that hadn't seen a wash in 2 weeks, and saw something between a delivery drone and a snack. "Your vessel does not meet the safety requirements for transit through Vaceri-controlled space," Beaky said, his translator unit rendering his clicks and hisses into flat, bureaucratic English. His 3 secondary arms were doing something complicated with a data slate, while his primary arms crossed over his chest. "We are impounding your cargo pending further review." Kevin leaned against the bulkhead, feeling every one of his 42 years in his knees. The ammonia smell from the docking bay was mixing with the ship's ambient odor to create something truly special. "Just stamp the damn slip, Beaky." The translator paused, likely trying to parse the nickname. Behind Beaky, 3 more Vaceri soldiers had filed into the cramped airlock, their chitin polished to the same mirror shine, their movements precise and efficient. They carried pulse rifles that looked like they could punch a hole through the Lucky Break's hull plating. The tallest one, easily 8 feet, had to duck slightly to clear the doorframe. "The portmaster's name is Vexel Thor," said the tall one. His voice was deeper, more resonant, the clicks rolling like stones in a landslide. "You will address him with proper respect, or we will detain you for protocol violation." Kevin rubbed his eyes. The cockpit lights were flickering again, some kind of short in the power relay that he'd been meaning to fix for 3 months. The strobing effect was doing nothing for his headache. "Look, I've got delivery confirmation, I've got cargo manifests, I've got a hauling license that's valid in 17 systems, including this one. The only thing not in order is your demand for a 15% surcharge that isn't in any of the posted tariffs." Beaky's head tilted, the avian neck bending at an angle that would have required immediate medical attention in a human. "You're accusing a Vaceri Port Authority of corruption?" "I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm saying stamp the slip so I can get out of here before my ship falls apart in your docking bay and you have to clean up the mess." The tall soldier took a step forward. The deck plates creaked under his weight. Vaceri bone density was no joke. Each of these soldiers probably massed 300 kilos, and they moved like they knew exactly how much damage that mass could do. "Your species is classified as a Class 2 organism on the Galactic Threat Index," the soldier said, conversational now, almost bored. "Minimal natural weapons, thin epidermis, low bone density, no thermal resistance. Your planet is categorized as a death world, not because you are dangerous, but because it is trying to kill you, and you have survived through technology and numbers rather than individual capability." Kevin nodded slowly. That's a lot of words to say you think I'm soft. I am saying that if we chose to, we could crush your skull with one manipulator while conducting an inventory audit with the other three. Your presence here is tolerated, not respected. You will pay the surcharge, or you will wait in detention while we process your impoundment paperwork. The three other soldiers had spread out slightly, blocking the two exits from the cockpit. The one nearest the cargo bay door had his rifle pointed at the floor, but his finger was on the trigger guard. Standard intimidation posture. Kevin had seen it 100 times from 100 different species. The specifics changed, the number of limbs, the type of weapon, the chemical composition of the threat display. But the underlying psychology was always the same. Bigger creature tries to make smaller creature comply through implied violence. It worked on most species. It probably worked on 99% of the galaxy. But Kevin came from a planet where the deer had antlers designed to impale predators, where the bears could run faster than Olympic sprinters and tear through car doors like tissue paper, where the fucking squirrels carried diseases that could liquefy your organs. He'd grown up in a species that had looked at wolves, pack-hunting endurance predators with jaws built to crush bone, and said, "You know what? I bet we could make those things guard our houses." He wasn't scared of the Vaceri. He was tired. There's a difference. "Okay," Kevin said. "Fine. You want the surcharge, you can have the surcharge. But I don't have 15%. I've got 5% in my operational account, and the rest is tied up in fuel credits that don't clear until I hit the next way station." Beaky's beak clicked once, twice, a gesture of satisfaction. 5% now. The remainder will be collected upon your next docking at a Vaceri facility, plus a processing fee for the delayed payment. Sounds great. Stamp the slip. The portmaster pulled a stamp from his belt, a heavy, ornate thing made of machined metal that probably cost more than Kevin's entire ship, and pressed it to the data slate. The ink glowed purple for a moment, then settled into a deep black. "Your cargo is cleared for departure. You have 30 standard minutes to vacate the docking bay before we begin charging storage fees. I'll be gone in 10. Kevin turned to walk back to the cockpit, and that's when the snoring stopped. It was a small sound, just a shift in breathing, the kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you'd spent 13 years learning to read every grunt and sigh that came out of that particular animal. But Kevin noticed. He always noticed. Behind him, one of the soldiers, the one who'd been blocking the cargo bay door, made a sound that wasn't quite a word. It was more of a wet clicking, like rocks being shaken in a metal cup. "Portmaster, there's something in the cargo bay." Beaky's head swiveled. "What kind of something?" "It is alive. The thermal scanner is detecting a large, warm-blooded organism in the forward compartment." "That's just my dog," Kevin said, not turning around. "He's sleeping. Don't wake him up." "Your dog?" "Terrestrial canine, companion animal. He's got a chip in his shoulder with all his vaccine records and species classification. It's in the manifest under personal effects." Beaky's translator hissed. "You are transporting a live animal without a containment certificate?" He's not cargo. He's a passenger. There's a difference under Galactic Transport Law Section 12, subsection 4. Passengers don't need containment certificates if they're under 50 kilos and non-sentient." The tall soldier had his pulse rifle up now, the barrel pointed at the closed door to the cargo bay. "Portmaster, the thermal signature is increasing. The organism is waking up." Kevin finally turned around. Duke was definitely awake now. He could hear the click of nails on the deck plating, the soft huff of breath, the creak of old dog joints as the German shepherd got to his feet. The door was closed, but it was one of those cheap sliding panels that didn't quite seal, and the smell of dog was starting to leak through more strongly. "You really don't want to do that," Kevin said, nodding at the soldier with the rifle. "He's friendly, but he doesn't like loud noises. And he's old, so his hearing's not great. If you startle him, he might think you're playing." "Playing," Beaky repeated, the concept clearly foreign to his translator. "Your creature plays. He's a dog. That's what they do. Look, can we just finish this up? I've got a delivery window and you've got a port to run." The cargo bay door slid open. Duke stood in the doorway, blinking in the brighter light of the cockpit. He was 75 pounds of grey-muzzled, slightly overweight, arthritic German shepherd. One of his ears flopped at a weird angle from a hematoma he'd gotten 2 years ago chasing a squirrel. His hips were starting to go, so he walked with a slight sway. His tail, however, was wagging. A slow, curious wag that meant, I smell new people and I'm trying to decide if they have treats. To a human, Duke was an elderly pet in need of glucosamine supplements and regular vet checkups. To the Vaceri, he was an abomination. The soldier with the rifle took 3 steps backward, his chitin plates rattling against each other. The other 2 soldiers had gone completely still, the kind of stillness that prey animals use when they're hoping a predator won't notice them. Beaky's beak had dropped open, and his 4 arms were raised in a defensive posture that looked almost reflexive. "What?" Beaky whispered. "Is that?" Kevin looked at Duke. Duke looked at Kevin. Duke wagged his tail harder. "That's Duke. He's a German shepherd. Like I said, he's a dog." The tall soldier's translator was outputting static now, his clicks and hisses too fast for the unit to parse. "Portmaster, the bone density scanner, the organism's jaw musculature, the thermal output—" "I see it," Beaky said, and there was something new in his voice, something that sounded almost like awe, if awe could be mixed with terror. "The bite force alone would be sufficient to puncture our chitin. The limb structure suggests sustained pursuit capability. The dentition is optimized for shearing flesh and crushing bone." "He's 75% muscle," Kevin said, leaning against the bulkhead again. "And he's not even a particularly big dog. You should see a mastiff sometime." "Your species keeps these creatures as companions?" "Some of us. Mostly I just pay for his food and pick up his crap. He's not a guard dog or anything. He's just a pet." Duke had decided that the tall soldier was interesting. He ambled over, nails clicking on the deck, and sat down directly in front of the 8-foot-tall predator. Then he tilted his head, the universal dog gesture for, "I am confused but friendly," and let out a soft woof. The soldier dropped his pulse rifle. It clattered on the deck and Duke's ears perked up. He loved noises. Noises meant attention. He leaned forward and sniffed the soldier's leg, his wet nose leaving a trail of condensation on the chitin. "Portmaster," the soldier said, his voice now a high-pitched warble that the translator rendered as something close to a scream. "It is touching me." "He likes you," Kevin said. "That's a good sign. Usually he only growls at people who are hiding weapons." Beaky's 4 arms were trembling. "Your creature can detect concealed weaponry?" "No, he can smell fear. Same thing, basically. Relax and he'll lose interest." Duke had finished sniffing the soldier and had moved on to the next one, a smaller Vaceri who was pressing himself against the wall like he was trying to phase through it. The dog's tail was still wagging, and he was making the little huffing sounds that meant he was having a good time. Kevin checked his watch. They'd burned 8 minutes of their departure window already. "Okay, fun's over. Duke, come." The dog ignored him. Because of course he did. He was a German shepherd. Selective hearing was in the breed standard. Duke, still ignoring. He was now sniffing Beaky's lower left hand, which the portmaster had frozen in mid-gesture. "Duke, I swear to God, if you don't come here right now, no treat when we get home." The dog's ears twitched. Treat was a word he understood. He gave Beaky's hand one last sniff, then turned and trotted back to Kevin, his claws scrabbling for traction on the smooth deck plating. He sat down at Kevin's feet and looked up expectantly. "Good boy," Kevin said, scratching behind the good ear. Duke leaned into the scratch, his eyes half closing in bliss. "See? Totally harmless. Just an old dog." Beaky's translator took a moment to catch up. When it did, his voice was different, flatter, more controlled. The voice of someone trying very hard not to show how badly his hands were shaking. "Your departure clearance is approved. You will leave immediately." "I already knew that. You stamped the slip. You will leave now." Yeah, come on, Duke, let's get out of here." Kevin walked back to the cockpit, Duke padding along beside him. He settled into the pilot's chair, the one with the torn upholstery and the suspicious stain on the armrest, and started the engine warm-up sequence. The displays flickered to life, showing him the familiar array of system statuses, fuel levels, and navigation data. Behind him, he could hear the Vaceri soldiers retreating, their heavy footsteps echoing on the docking bay deck. Duke circled 3 times on his cardboard box, then flopped down with a heavy sigh. Within 30 seconds, he was snoring again. Kevin pulled up the departure vector and waited for the docking clamps to release. The Lucky Break's engines wheezed to life. the vibration rattling through the whole frame. He could smell the burnt oil and overheated wiring that meant they were pushing the old girl too hard, but that was fine. They just needed to make it to the next way station. From there, he could file a flight plan, pick up another cargo, and forget this whole encounter ever happened. The docking clamps released. Kevin pushed the throttle forward, and the lucky brake limped out of the bay and into the black. The first thing Kevin did once they were clear of the station's gravity well was brew a pot of coffee. The machine was older than the ship, a relic from some long-dead manufacturer that had probably gone out of business before he was born. It made a sound like a dying animal and produced a liquid that was technically coffee, but tasted more like burnt plastic and regret. Kevin drank it anyway. He was on hour 38 now, and he had at least 12 more before he could safely sleep. Duke had relocated to his secondary sleeping spot, a pile of old blankets in the corner of the cockpit that smelled like worn leather, cheap synthetic noodles, and old corn chips. The dog's legs were twitching, chasing something in his dreams. Kevin watched him for a moment, then turned back to the navigation display. The route to Waystation Delta 4 was simple enough: 17 hours of standard transit through Vaceri-controlled space, then a jump gate to the neutral zone, then another 6 hours to the station. He'd done the run a dozen times, boring, routine, and exactly what he needed right now. His ribs ached. One of the Vaceri soldiers had gotten a little too enthusiastic with a random inspection back at the dock, jabbing him with something hard and metal. It had left a bruise the size of a dinner plate on his left side, an angry marbled thing that throbbed every time he breathed too deep. He dry swallowed 2 painkillers and washed them down with another slug of bad coffee. The Lucky Break's comms unit crackled. Someone was hailing him on an encrypted channel, which was weird. Encrypted channels were for military or corporate traffic, not freelance haulers with rust bucket ships. Kevin tapped the accept button. "Lucky Break, this is Kevin. Go ahead." Static. Then a voice, synthesized and flat. "Human transport vessel Lucky Break, this is Vaceri Military Command. You are ordered to heave to and prepare for boarding." He looked at the navigation display. No other ships within sensor range, no warnings, no alerts, nothing to indicate why a military vessel would be interested in him. "This is Lucky Break. I think you've got the wrong ship. I'm just running medical supplies to Delta 4. You are in possession of a prohibited organism. You will submit to immediate inspection and confiscation." Kevin's hand paused over the throttle. Prohibited organism. They meant Duke. "Duke's not prohibited. He's on the manifest. He's a Class 1 domestic companion, fully vaccinated, registered with the Galactic Transport Authority. The organism has been reclassified pending review. You will comply." "I'm not complying with anything. I've got a valid transport license and a clean inspection record. You can't just reclassify my dog because your soldiers got scared." There was a pause. When the voice came back, it was different, lower, more deliberate. "Human, you do not understand the situation. The organism you call Duke is not merely a companion animal. Our analysis of the scan data indicates that its evolutionary lineage is that of a pursuit predator designed to bring down prey many times its own mass through sustained endurance and pack coordination. Your species did not domesticate this creature. You formed a symbiotic relationship with an apex predator, and that predator has now been flagged as a potential threat to Vaceri planetary security." Kevin laughed. It came out as a short, sharp bark that startled Duke awake. The dog lifted his head, looked around, decided nothing was happening, and went back to sleep. "You think my dog is a threat to planetary security? He's 13 years old. He's got arthritis. He threw up on my boots last week because he ate something weird off the floor of a cargo bay. Your emotional attachment to the organism is noted and irrelevant. You will submit to boarding or we will use force." Kevin pulled up the sensor display again. Still nothing, which meant the military vessel was either running silent or was still too far away to show up on the Lucky Break's outdated scanners. Either way, he had maybe 10 minutes before they were on top of him. He could run. The Lucky Break wasn't fast, but she was small, and there were plenty of asteroid fields and debris clouds in this sector that could hide a ship her size. But running meant burning fuel he didn't have, and it meant confirming whatever suspicion had made them flag Duke in the first place. Or he could talk his way out of it. That had worked sometimes. Vaceri bureaucracy was a nightmare, but it was predictable. If he could find the right form, the right regulation, the right official to appeal to, he could probably get the reclassification reversed. Lucky break to Vaceri command. I'm not going to submit to boarding, but I am willing to divert to the nearest Vaceri administrative station to resolve this through proper channels. I'll meet you at Theta 9 in 4 hours. Your request is denied. You will heave to now. My request is perfectly reasonable under Galactic Transport Law Section 7, subsection 12, right to administrative review before enforcement action. You can look it up if you want. Another pause, longer this time. Kevin used the silence to plot a course to Theta 9 anyway. The fuel cost would hurt, but it was better than getting shot at. Human. Your knowledge of transport law does not change the reclassification. The organism Duke is now designated as a Class 4 hazardous Sheng-Wu. You have 60 seconds to comply. Kevin looked at Duke. Duke was dreaming again, his paws twitching, his tongue lolling out of the side of his mouth. The dog had no idea that an entire military bureaucracy was currently panicking over his existence. He was just an old animal, snoring on a pile of blankets, waiting for his next meal and the chance to pee on something interesting. Vaceri command, this is Lucky Break. I'm not going to comply. I'm also not going to run. I'm going to continue on my planned route to Delta 4, and when I get there, I'm going to file a formal complaint about harassment and unlawful reclassification. If you want to stop me, you're going to have to explain to your superiors why you opened fire on a civilian transport carrying medical supplies to a station with a recent plague outbreak. The channel went dead. Kevin waited. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. The sensor display remained empty. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding and leaned back in the pilot's chair. The bruise on his ribs throbbed. The coffee had gone cold. Duke was still snoring. Stupid birds, Kevin muttered, and changed course back to the original route. The next 10 hours were uneventful. Kevin ran through the ship's maintenance checklist, topping off fluids and patching a small leak in the coolant line with emergency sealant. He ate a ration bar that tasted like compressed cardboard and pretended it was food. He checked on the medical supplies in the cargo bay, 50 crates of vaccines and antibiotics bound for a colony that had been hit hard by some kind of respiratory plague. The crates were strapped down and secure, their temperature monitors showing steady green. He thought about the Vaceri, about the way Beaky's hands had trembled, about the soldier who'd dropped his rifle, about the fear in their voices when Duke had walked into the room. It was almost funny, in a dark kind of way. The Vaceri were supposed to be apex predators. They'd evolved on a high-gravity world with dangerous native wildlife, had developed advanced technology and interstellar travel, and had spent centuries building an empire based on their supposed biological superiority. And then a 75-pound dog with bad hips had walked into the room and reduced them to trembling wrecks. Kevin had seen it before, though, not with dogs, but with other things. Humans were weird by galactic standards. They came from a planet where everything was trying to kill them, so they'd evolved to be adaptable, persistent, and just crazy enough to look at a wolf and see a friend. Most species in the galaxy had gone the other way. They'd eliminated their predators, or evolved past the need for them, or simply never had them in the first place. The Vaceri had predators on their homeworld, sure, but those predators were mindless beasts, not pack hunters with problem-solving intelligence and social bonding instincts. Humans had looked at the most successful predator on their planet and said, "Let's be friends." And it had worked. The proximity alarm went off at hour 14. Kevin was in the middle of his third cup of coffee, staring at the navigation display and trying to calculate whether he had enough fuel to make the jump gate without dipping into his emergency reserves. The alarm was a high-pitched shriek that cut through the cockpit's ambient noise like a scalpel. He nearly dropped the coffee. Duke was on his feet instantly, ears forward, a low growl building in his chest. The growl was the serious one, not the playful, "I see a squirrel" growl, but the deep, rumbling, "something is wrong" growl that Kevin had learned to trust over 13 years. Kevin slapped the alarm off and pulled up the sensor display. The screen was filled with contacts. Dozens of them. All Vaceri military vessels arranged in a perfect interdiction formation that blocked every possible escape vector. "Aw, hell," the comms unit crackled. Human transport vessel Lucky Break. This is Vaceri Fleet Commander Thraxvor. You are surrounded. You have no escape options. You will heave to and prepare for boarding, or we will disable your vessel and board by force. Kevin looked at the sensor display again. The vessels were all heavy cruisers, the kind of ships designed for planetary bombardment and fleet engagements, not chasing down a single rusty freighter. They'd brought a full interdiction squadron. For a dog. Fleet Commander, this is Lucky Break. I'm going to need you to explain to me why you've got an entire squadron deployed for a routine inspection. Your organism is no longer classified as hazardous. It has been reclassified as an extinction-level threat. Kevin blinked. I'm sorry, what? Analysis of the scan data from Theta 9 has been reviewed by Vaceri High Command. The organism's evolutionary lineage has been traced to a class of predator that does not exist in our homeworld's ecosystem. It is a persistence hunter, capable of tracking prey over vast distances through scent detection. Its jaw structure indicates a bite force sufficient to penetrate Vaceri chitin. Its pack behavior suggests coordinated attack strategies, and its relationship with your species indicates that humans have formed a military alliance with an apex predator species. They're not a military alliance, they're pets. I feed him and he sleeps on my floor. Your emotional attachment does not change the threat assessment. The organism Duke represents an unacceptable risk to Vaceri security. It will be confiscated and neutralized. You will comply, or your vessel will be destroyed. Kevin's hand drifted to the throttle. Not to run, there was nowhere to run, but to brace himself. He'd been in bad situations before. He'd been shot at, boarded, threatened, and once, memorably, held at gunpoint by a species that communicated entirely through interpretive dance. But he'd never had an entire fleet tell him they were going to kill his dog. Fleet Commander, I'm going to say this once. Duke is a pet. He's not a weapon, he's not a threat, and he's not going to be neutralized. If you try to board my ship, you're going to find out exactly what happens when you corner an animal that's been protecting humans for 40,000 years. Your threats are noted and irrelevant. You have 60 seconds. Kevin looked at Duke. The dog was standing at the cockpit door, his hackles raised, his growl now a continuous rumble. He knew something was wrong. He could probably smell the fear coming off the Vaceri ships, or maybe he was just reacting to Kevin's own tension. Either way, he was ready. 13 years old, arthritic, half-deaf, and ready to throw down with an entire military fleet because his human was upset. Good boy, Kevin said softly. He pulled up the ship's comms and switched to an open channel. This is human transport vessel Lucky Break to all Vaceri military vessels in the sector. I am carrying 50 crates of medical supplies destined for a plague-stricken colony. I am also carrying a domestic canine who has never hurt anyone in his entire life. I am transmitting my manifests, my inspection records, and my route data. If you choose to open fire on a civilian transport, that's on you. But I want it on the record that you did it because you were scared of a dog. He hit transmit and waited. The channel crackled. Human. Your defiance is noted. Your vessel will be. The transmission cut off. Kevin frowned. He checked the comms display. The signal was still there, but the Vaceri commander had stopped transmitting. The sensor display showed the fleet holding position, their weapons still powered up, but something had changed. The formation had shifted slightly, the ship spreading out in a defensive pattern rather than an offensive one. What are you doing? No answer. The comms channel remained silent. Kevin zoomed in on the sensor display, trying to get a better look at the fleet's disposition. That's when he saw it. A new contact, far outside the formation, moving fast. Too fast for a Vaceri ship. Too fast for anything he'd ever seen on sensors. The contact resolved into a shape he didn't recognize. Long and angular, with a drive signature that made the Lucky Break sensors scream in protest. It was moving at a velocity that should have torn apart any normal ship, and it was heading straight for the Vaceri fleet. What the hell is that? The comms channel burst into life, but it wasn't the Vaceri commander. It was a voice Kevin had never heard before, smooth, calm, and carrying an authority that made the Vaceri transmissions sound like children arguing. Vaceri fleet. This is the United Nations Space Command vessel Indomitable. You are ordered to stand down and withdraw from this sector immediately. The vessel you are attempting to intercept is a civilian transport operating under UNSC registry and protection. Any hostile action against this vessel will be considered an act of war against humanity. Kevin stared at the comms unit. UNSC, United Nations Space Command. He'd heard the name, of course, every human in the galaxy had, but he'd never had any direct contact with them. They were the military arm of Earth's unified government, the people who'd turned humanity from a scattered collection of colonies into a genuine interstellar power. They were also, from what he'd heard, absolutely terrifying when provoked. The Vaceri commander's voice came back, but it had lost its confident edge. UNSC vessel, this is Vaceri Fleet Commander Thrax Vor. The human transport is in possession of a prohibited organism classified as an extinction-level threat. We are acting within our rights under galactic security protocols. Your classification has been reviewed and rejected by the Interstellar Council's Committee on Biological Threats. The organism known as Duke is a domestic canine, classified as a Class 1 companion animal under all applicable treaties and regulations. Your attempt to reclassify it was an administrative overreach, and your deployment of military forces against a civilian transport is a violation of interstellar law. You will stand down now, or you will be fired upon. There was a long pause. Kevin watched the sensor display as the Vaceri fleet's formation shifted again, this time into a withdrawal pattern. UNSC Indomitable, this is Vaceri fleet. We are standing down, but we will be filing a formal protest regarding your species' continued possession of biological weapons masquerading as pets. Duly noted. Now leave. The Vaceri fleet began to move, their drive signatures flaring as they accelerated away from the sector. Within minutes, the sensor display was clear, except for the UNSC vessel and the lucky break. Kevin sat in his pilot's chair, his hands shaking slightly. Duke had stopped growling and was now sitting at his feet, looking up at him with the patient expression that meant, "Is it treat time yet?" The comms channel crackled again. "Lucky break, this is UNSC Indomitable. Are you all right?" Kevin found his voice. Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for the assist. How did you even know I was out here?" "Your ship's transponder flagged when the Vaceri reclassified your dog. We've been monitoring the situation ever since. Commander Thraxvor has a history of overreach. He's been looking for an excuse to test our response times." Well, he picked the wrong hauler to mess with. There was a sound that might have been a laugh. "That's the spirit. Listen, we're going to escort you to Delta 4. The Vaceri won't try anything with us in the system. After that, you might want to consider a different trade route for a while." "I'll keep that in mind. Thanks again." "Don't mention it. Protect the dog. He's worth more than all their warships combined." The channel closed. Kevin watched the UNSC vessel take up a position off his starboard bow, its massive hull gleaming in the starlight. It was easily 10 times the size of the Lucky Break, bristling with weapons and sensors and everything else a proper warship needed. But right now, it was just an escort, guiding a rusty freighter and an old dog through hostile space. Duke had gone back to his cardboard box, circling 3 times before flopping down with a satisfied grunt. His tail gave a single thump against the floor, and then he was asleep again, dreaming of whatever dogs dreamed about. Kevin poured himself another cup of cold coffee and set a course for Delta 4. They made it to the station without further incident. The UNSC vessel peeled off at the edge of the neutral zone, its captain wishing them safe travels and reminding Kevin to keep Duke's vaccine records updated. Kevin docked at Delta 4, delivered the medical supplies, collected his payment, and spent 3 hours filling out paperwork about the Vaceri incident. The station's quartermaster, a grizzled old human who'd seen too many years in space, read the incident report and laughed when he got to the part about Duke. "They really tried to reclassify your dog as an extinction-level threat?" "That's what they said." "You know what that means, right? They're scared of us, not because of our ships or our weapons, but because we've got dogs. They looked at a German shepherd and saw a monster." Kevin scratched Duke behind the ears. The dog leaned into the scratch, his eyes half closed, his tail wagging slowly. "They don't understand. They think we trained him to be a weapon. But we didn't. We just lived next to each other long enough that we figured out how to get along." That's what scares them the most. Not the teeth or the claws. The fact that we can make friends with anything. The quartermaster slid a credit chit across the counter. Your payment, plus a bonus for dealing with the Vaceri. And a suggestion, next time you're in this sector, bring the dog by the station's recreation deck. The kids love seeing Earth animals. Kevin took the chit and tucked it into his jacket pocket. I'll do that. He walked back to the Lucky Break, Duke padding along beside him. The docking bay was crowded with ships from a dozen different species, their crews moving cargo and conducting repairs and going about their business. A few of them looked at Duke with curiosity. Most of them didn't look twice. None of them knew that the old dog walking past them had been classified as an extinction-level threat by one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. None of them knew that an entire fleet had been deployed to intercept him. None of them knew that a UNSC warship had threatened to start a war over his safety. They just saw a dog. An old, gray-muzzled, slightly overweight dog with bad hips and a floppy ear. Kevin smiled. Duke wagged his tail. They had 12 more hours until the next cargo pickup, enough time for a nap, a hot meal, and a long walk around the station's artificial park. Kevin could feel the exhaustion settling into his bones, the kind of deep tiredness that only came from running on adrenaline and bad coffee for too long. But he was alive. Duke was alive. The Lucky Break was still flying somehow. That was enough. The cockpit was warm when they got back, the heaters working overtime to compensate for the station's cold docking bay. Duke headed straight for his cardboard box, circling once before collapsing with a groan that spoke volumes about the hardships of being an elderly dog. Kevin settled into the pilot's chair, pulled up the navigation display, and started plotting their next route. He was just about to start the engine warm-up sequence when the comms unit crackled again. Lucky Break, this is Delta 4 Control. Incoming priority message for you. It's from the UNSC Indomitable. Kevin frowned. Put it through. The channel opened, and the smooth voice from before filled the cockpit. Captain Kevin, I hope you're doing well. I have some information you might find interesting. I'm listening. We did some digging after the Vaceri incident. It turns out your friend Commander Thraxvor wasn't acting alone. He was part of a larger operation, a coalition of species who've been trying to get Earth animals classified as biological weapons for years. They're afraid of us, Kevin, not of our technology or our military. They're afraid of our dogs, our cats, our horses. Every animal we've ever domesticated is a reminder that humans can coexist with things that should, by all rights, kill us. Kevin looked at Duke. The dog had rolled onto his side, his legs twitching as he chased something in his dreams. What does that mean for me? It means you're going to have company. The Vaceri aren't going to let this go. They'll try again, probably through legal channels this time, but maybe not. We're assigning a protective detail to your ship. Nothing obvious, just a few UNSC operatives posing as cargo handlers. They'll keep an eye on you and Duke until this blows over. I didn't ask for protection. I know, but you've got it anyway. Consider it thanks from the UNSC. You handled yourself well out there. Most people would have folded the moment the fleet showed up. Kevin rubbed his eyes. He was too tired to argue. Fine, but they'd better not wake up my dog. They'll be quiet. Safe travels, Captain. The channel closed. Kevin sat in the darkness of the cockpit, listening to the hum of the Lucky Break's life support systems and the soft sound of Duke's breathing. Somewhere out there, an interstellar coalition was plotting to classify his dog as a weapon of mass destruction. Somewhere else, a UNSC warship was preparing to defend his right to keep that dog. And in between, 1,000 other species were watching, waiting to see how it would all play out. He reached down and scratched Duke behind the ear. The dog sighed contentedly and shifted in his sleep. Don't worry, buddy, Kevin said. They're not going to hurt you. Duke didn't respond. He was too busy chasing rabbits in his dreams. Kevin powered up the engines, filed a flight plan, and prepared to leave Delta 4 behind. The next cargo was waiting. The next adventure was coming. And somewhere, in the dark between the stars, the galaxy was learning a lesson it would never forget. You don't mess with a human's dog. You don't mess with a human's dog. That was the lesson anyway. Kevin wished the galaxy would learn it a little faster. The protective detail the UNSC had promised showed up 3 hours after the Lucky Break departed Delta 4. Kevin was in the middle of a maintenance check on the starboard thruster manifold. A messy job involving hydraulic fluid, a cracked seal, and a lot of words that would have made his mother wash his mouth out with soap when the docking alert sounded. He banged his head on the access panel, cursed, and crawled out to see what fresh hell was boarding his ship. Two figures stood in the airlock. They were human, which was a relief. They were also both wearing UNSC tactical gear and carrying enough firepower to take over a small space station, which was less of a relief. The taller one, a woman with close-cropped gray hair and the kind of scarred knuckles that came from decades of hand-to-hand combat, stepped forward and saluted. "Captain Kevin, I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Voss. This is Sergeant Marcus Webb. We've been assigned to your protective detail." Kevin wiped hydraulic fluid off his hands and onto his already stained flight jacket. "I didn't ask for a protective detail." "Noted. We're here anyway." Voss lowered her hand and looked around the cockpit with the expression of someone who had just walked into a disaster zone and was trying very hard not to comment on it. "Where's the dog?" Duke had woken up at the sound of new voices and was currently standing in the doorway of the cargo bay, his tail wagging at half-mast, cautious but curious. He sniffed the air, processed the new smells, and apparently decided that these strangers were acceptable because he ambled over and pressed his head against Sergeant Webb's thigh. Webb, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a face that looked like it had been used to stop a door, froze for exactly half a second. Then he reached down and scratched behind Duke's ears with the careful precision of someone who was used to handling dangerous things and wasn't entirely sure this qualified. "He's friendly," Kevin said. "Too friendly, honestly. He'd probably help a burglar carry stuff out if the burglar gave him treats." "He's got a good temperament," Webb said, his voice surprisingly soft for someone his size. "What's his name?" "Duke. He's 13. That's old for a German shepherd. He's got arthritis and bad hips and he's half deaf, but he's still got more fight in him than most of the species I've met out here." Voss had moved to the cockpit's small viewport, scanning the docking bay outside. "We'll need to go over your route. The Vaceri have been making noise on diplomatic channels, something about filing an official complaint with the Interstellar Council. They're trying to get a ban on all Earth cannons in Vaceri-controlled space," Kevin groaned. "Great. So now my dog is a political incident." "More than that. There are 3 other species backing the Vaceri on this, the Rethans, the Catal, and the Meld. All of them have biological threat assessment protocols that classify terrestrial canids as potential extinction events. If the Council sides with them, we're looking at a galaxy-wide ban on transporting dogs through any of their territories." "That's insane. He's a dog. Dogs don't exist in their ecosystems. They don't have anything like them. The Rethans are descended from prey animals. Their entire evolution is built around avoiding persistence predators. The idea of an animal that can track them for days, coordinate with a pack, and never give up until the prey collapses from exhaustion is literally their worst nightmare made flesh." Kevin looked at Duke. The dog had decided that Webb was his new best friend and was now leaning against the sergeant's leg with his full 75 pounds of furry weight. Webb, to his credit, was handling it well. "So what do we do?" "We keep flying. The UNSC is lobbying against the ban, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, we're here to make sure no one tries anything stupid. The Vaceri are proud. They don't like being embarrassed, and you embarrassed them." "I didn't embarrass them. Their own fear embarrassed them." "Same thing from their perspective." Voss pulled out a data slate and tapped through several screens. "Your next cargo pickup is at way station Epsilon 12. That's Rethan territory. The Rethans are the ones pushing hardest for the ban. You might want to reconsider." Kevin thought about it. The cargo at Epsilon 12 was high value. Medical-grade synthesizers bound for a colony that had been cut off by a recent solar flare. The pay was enough to cover 6 months of operating costs for the lucky break, but walking into Rethan territory with a dog that their species considered a biological nightmare seemed like a good way to get shot. "How much is the payout?" 40,000 credits, Kevin whistled. "That's a lot of zeros." "It's a lot of risk, too. The Rethans aren't like the Vaceri. They don't posture and threaten, they run. And when prey animals run, they don't stop to think about whether they're overreacting." Duke had wandered back to his cardboard box and was circling it, preparing for another nap. The old dog had no idea that entire interstellar political movements were being built around his existence. He just wanted to sleep and maybe get a treat later. "We're going. Kevin said. 40,000 credits buys a lot of vet bills and arthritis meds, but I'm not walking into a trap. If the Rethans look twitchy, we back off. Voss nodded. Fair enough. We'll run escort in our own ship, a modified scout vessel, small enough to stay close but armed enough to handle trouble. We'll stay on comms and keep a sensor lock on you at all times. If anything goes wrong, we extract you and the dog first and ask questions never. Sounds like a plan. Webb had moved to the cargo bay and was examining the strapped-down crates with a professional eye. You run a clean ship, Captain. Not fancy, but clean. How long have you been hauling? 15 years. Started right out of the Merchant Marine Academy. Been running my own routes for the last 12. This ship belonged to my father before me. He used to run supplies to the outer colonies during the expansion wars. Your father have a name? Tom. He died about 5 years back. Cancer. The kind they can't cure even with all the fancy galactic medicine. Kevin's voice stayed flat, but something in his eyes flickered. Left me the lucky break and a whole lot of debt. I've been paying it off ever since. Voss and Webb exchanged a look, the kind of look that said they'd both heard similar stories 100 times before. The outer colonies were rough. The people who ran supplies to them were rougher, and the ones who survived long enough to get old were the roughest of all. We'll be on our ship, Voss said, heading back to the airlock. We'll maintain a distance of 5,000 clicks, running silent. If you need us, use this frequency. She handed Kevin a small encrypted comms unit. Don't lose it. I won't. And Captain, keep the dog close. He's the reason we're here. Voss and Webb cycled through the airlock, and within minutes Kevin saw a small, angular vessel detach from the station's docking arm and slip into the black. It was fast, much faster than the lucky break, and it moved with the kind of precision that spoke of military-grade piloting. He watched it vanish into the darkness and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. He didn't trust it. The trip to Epsilon 12 took 19 hours. Kevin spent the first 12 catching up on sleep, real sleep in the pilot's chair with a blanket pulled up to his chin while Duke snored on the floor beside him. The dreamless kind of sleep that came from pure exhaustion, the kind that left you feeling almost human when you woke up. He ate 2 ration bars, drank 3 cups of bad coffee, and ran through the ship's maintenance checklist twice. Everything was holding together, more or less. The lucky break was a piece of junk, but she was a reliable piece of junk. The comms unit Voss had given him remained silent. That was good. Silent meant nothing was wrong. Epsilon 12 appeared on the sensors at hour 17. It was a small station, barely more than a refueling outpost, floating in the middle of a sparse asteroid field. The Rethans had built it as a trading post, a neutral ground where multiple species could exchange goods without the complications of formal diplomacy. It was the kind of place where deals got made and information got sold and no one asked too many questions. Kevin pulled up the station's approach protocols and started the docking sequence. That's when the comms crackled. Human vessel lucky break. This is Epsilon 12 control. You are cleared for docking at Bay 7. Please confirm that you are not transporting any biological organisms classified as hazardous under Rethan security protocols. Kevin looked at Duke. Duke looked back at him with the patient expression of a dog who had no idea he was a political incident. Epsilon 12 control. This is lucky break. I have 1 domestic canine on board. He's a Class 1 companion animal under galactic transport law, fully vaccinated and registered. A pause. Then, your classification is noted. However, under Rethan security protocols, all canids are subject to additional screening. You will proceed to Bay 7 and remain on your vessel until a Rethan inspection team arrives. I'm not letting anyone inspect my dog. He's old and he gets anxious around strangers. Then you will not be permitted to dock. The choice is yours. Kevin glanced at the sensor display. The UNSC scout vessel was still out there, lurking in the asteroid field, its drive signature barely a whisper on the long-range scanners. He could call them in, or he could handle this himself. Fine, I'll submit to inspection. But the inspection team stays at least 3 meters away from my dog at all times. He's not dangerous, but he's protective. If he thinks I'm being threatened, he might react. Understood. Proceed to Bay 7. The docking bay was dimly lit and smelled like ozone and something vaguely metallic, the Rethan equivalent of air freshener, probably. Kevin cycled the airlock and stepped out onto the deck, Duke on a leash beside him. The dog's nails clicked on the metal grating, and his ears were swiveling, taking in the new environment with cautious interest. The Rethan inspection team was waiting for him. They were small creatures, barely a meter tall, with elongated limbs, large dark eyes, and skin that shifted colors in response to their emotional state. Right now, they were a pale, mottled gray, which Kevin had learned meant extreme anxiety. Two of them were carrying scanners, and a third was holding a data slate with shaking hands. "Human," the one with the data slate said, its voice a soft chitter that the translator rendered as something almost musical. "You are Captain Kevin of the vessel Lucky Break?" "That's me." "You have a canid on board." "I have a dog. His name is Duke." The Rethans shifted closer together, their color deepening to a darker gray. One of them, the one with the scanner, raised the device and pointed it at Duke. The dog sat down and scratched an ear, completely oblivious to the fact that he was causing 3 adult aliens to contemplate a tactical retreat. "The scanner indicates..." The Rethan paused, its chittering accelerating. "The jaw musculature is consistent with a persistence hunter. The olfactory system is optimized for long-range tracking. The limb structure suggests sustained pursuit capability. Yeah, he can also open doors if they're not properly latched. It's very annoying." The Rethan with the data slate took a step back. "You do not understand the gravity of this situation. Your canid is classified as a potential extinction event under Rethan law. We have the authority to confiscate and neutralize any such organism found within our territory." Kevin's hand tightened on Duke's leash. "You can try." The Rethans exchanged glances. Their color shifted to a slightly lighter gray, still anxious but less panicked. "We are not here to threaten you, Captain. We are here to understand. Your species has a unique relationship with predators. We wish to know how it works, why you are not afraid." Kevin relaxed, just a fraction. "You want to know why I'm not scared of my own dog?" "Correct. Your canid is physically capable of inflicting grievous harm upon you. Its evolutionary history is one of violence and predation, and yet you share your living space with it. You feed it, you protect it. Why?" Kevin looked down at Duke. The dog had finished scratching his ear and was now staring at the Rethans with his head tilted, trying to figure out what these strange little creatures were. His tail wagged once, tentatively. "Because he's my friend," Kevin said. "Because 13 years ago, I found him in a shelter, a place where unwanted animals go, and he looked at me with these big brown eyes, and I knew that I wasn't going to leave without him. Because he's slept on my floor every night since then, and he's never once tried to hurt me. Because when I'm sad, he leans against me. When I'm scared, he growls at the things that scare me. When I'm lonely, he's there. He is a predator. He's a dog. There's a difference. Predators hunt because they have to. Dogs love because they want to. We bred them for that for thousands of years. We took the wolves that were brave enough to come close to our fires, and we turned them into something that would die for us without a second thought. That's not domestication. That's symbiosis." The Rethan with the data slate was quiet for a long moment. Its color shifted again, this time to a pale blue, the Rethan equivalent of curiosity. "Your species created a predator that loves you. We created a lot of things. Dogs are just the ones that turned out the best." The inspection team exchanged another set of glances. Then the one with the scanner lowered its device. "Your canid is cleared for transit through Rethan space. However, you will be required to keep him on a leash at all times while on station. He is not to be allowed near Rethan civilians, and you will vacate the station within 6 standard hours." "Done. Can I pick up my cargo now?" "Proceed to Cargo Bay 4. Your contact is waiting." Kevin tugged gently on Duke's leash, and the two of them walked deeper into the station. Behind him, he heard the Rethans chittering to each other in their native language, their colors shifting through shades he couldn't interpret. He didn't care what they were saying. He had a cargo to pick up and 40,000 credits waiting for him. Cargo Bay 4 was a cavernous space, filled with crates and containers from a dozen different species. The lighting was better here, bright and sterile, the kind of lighting that made everything look slightly unreal. Kevin spotted his contact immediately. a tall, thin Rethan wearing the kind of expensive clothing that marked him as a merchant rather than a bureaucrat. "Captain Kevin," the merchant said, his voice smooth and practiced, "I am Zelthor. I have your cargo ready for inspection." "Let's see it." Zelthor led him to a row of sealed containers, each one marked with the insignia of the colony that had ordered the synthesizers. Kevin ran through the manifest, checking serial numbers and seals. Everything matched. The containers were intact, their temperature monitors showing steady green. "Looks good," Kevin said. "Load them up and I'll transfer the payment." "Excellent. My workers will begin loading immediately. While they work, perhaps you would join me for a drink. There's a small establishment nearby that serves a beverage I believe your species would appreciate." Kevin hesitated. He didn't like leaving Duke alone, but the dog was tired and would probably just sleep through the loading process. And a drink sounded good. He hadn't had anything stronger than bad coffee in weeks. "Sure, but my dog comes with me." "Of course, I would not dream of separating you from your companion." The establishment was called something unpronounceable, so Kevin mentally labeled it the Blue Hole after the color of the lighting inside. It was a small, intimate space with booths built for Rethan physiology, low to the ground and surrounded by soft cushions. Kevin folded himself into one, Duke settling at his feet while Zelthor ordered 2 drinks from a serving drone. The beverage was a deep amber color and smelled like honey and something Kevin couldn't identify. He took a cautious sip. It was sweet with a smoky aftertaste that lingered on his tongue. Not bad. Not bad at all. "Your dog," Zelthor said, watching Duke with an expression Kevin couldn't read. "He's very calm for a predator." "He's old. Old dogs are calm. Young dogs are chaos on 4 legs." "And you have raised him since he was young?" "I adopted him when he was 2, so not a puppy, but young enough to be a handful. He chewed through 3 pairs of boots before he learned that boots weren't food." Zelthor's color shifted to a soft green. Amusement, Kevin had learned. "Your species has a remarkable capacity for patience. We Rethans have no such predators on our homeworld. Our evolution was shaped by flight, not fight. The idea of raising a predator from infancy, of teaching it not to harm you, it is incomprehensible to us. We've had a lot of practice, thousands of years of practice. Dogs are just the ones we're best at. We've also got cats, which are smaller and less dangerous, but also much more likely to judge you. And horses, which are big and strong and will let you ride them if you earn their trust. And cows, which are basically walking hamburgers that moo. I do not know what a hamburger is, but I assume it is a food source. Best not to think about it too hard." The serving drone returned with another round of drinks. Kevin was halfway through his second when he noticed that Zelthor's color had shifted again, this time to a deep, mottled red. Fear. "What's wrong?" "Captain, I must confess something. I did not ask you here solely for conversation. There is a situation developing, one that involves you and your canid." Kevin put down his drink. "What kind of situation?" "The Vaceri have offered a bounty, a substantial one, for the capture and delivery of your dog. They claim that he is a biological weapon and that anyone who delivers him to Vaceri authorities will be richly rewarded." Kevin's hand moved to Duke's leash, wrapping it around his knuckles. "Who else knows about this?" "Everyone. The bounty was posted 6 hours ago on the open market. There are already hunters looking for you. They know your ship, your route, your destination. They will be waiting." "Why are you telling me this? You could have taken the bounty yourself." Zelthor's color shifted again, this time to a pale blue, the same curiosity Kevin had seen in the inspection team. "Because I am curious. I want to see if a human and his dog can survive against the hunters. I want to know if your bond is as strong as you claim. And because if you survive, you will owe me a debt. And I believe that debt will be worth more than any bounty." Kevin stared at the Rethan merchant for a long moment. Then he finished his drink in one gulp and stood up. "We need to go." "Agreed. My workers have finished loading your cargo. Your ship is ready for departure. I suggest you leave immediately and do not stop until you reach neutral space." Kevin tugged Duke to his feet, and the two of them hurried out of the establishment. The dog seemed to sense the urgency, his ears flat against his head, his pace quick despite his arthritic hips. They made it back to the lucky break without incident, but Kevin could feel eyes on them, too many eyes watching from shadows and doorways. He sealed the airlock, started the engines, and transmitted an emergency departure request to station control. The response came back faster than he expected. Approved. Leave immediately. The docking clamps released, and Kevin pushed the throttle to maximum. The Lucky Break shuddered and groaned, but she lifted off the deck and surged toward the bay doors. Behind him, Kevin saw movement, a group of figures in the docking bay running toward the now empty berth. Hunters. They'd missed him by minutes. The bay doors opened, and the Lucky Break shot out into the black. Kevin's comms crackled, Voss's voice tight with tension. "We saw the departure. What happened?" "Bounty. Vaceri put a bounty on Duke. Every hunter in the sector is looking for us. We're moving to intercept. We'll have your 6 in 30 seconds. Where are you heading?" "Neutral space. The closest jump gate is at Theta 11. Can you get us there?" "We can try, but we're picking up multiple contacts on sensors. Fast movers, closing from all directions. You've got company, Captain." "A lot of it." Kevin looked at the sensor display. The screen was filling with red icons, each one representing a ship on an intercept course. They were coming from every angle, a net tightening around the Lucky Break. He counted 12, then 15, then lost track as more appeared. "Any of those friendly?" "Not a single one. They're all running hunter configurations, fast, armed, and built for boarding actions. They're not trying to shoot you down. They want you alive." "Great. So I've got the whole galaxy's bounty hunters after me and my dog." "Looks that way. Webb and I are going to try to draw some of them off, but you need to run, Kevin. Run as fast as that rust bucket can go and don't look back." The Lucky Break's engines were already at maximum, the vibration rattling through the whole frame. Kevin could smell burning insulation. Something was overheating, something that would probably need to be replaced after this, but that was a problem for later. Right now, the only problem was survival. Duke had positioned himself behind the pilot's chair, his body pressed against Kevin's leg. The dog wasn't growling, he was shaking. Old dogs know when something is wrong, even if they don't understand what. Duke understood that his human was scared, and that was enough. "Hold on, buddy," Kevin said, reaching down to scratch the dog's head. "We're going to be fine. We've been through worse." It was a lie. They'd never been through anything like this. The first hunter ship appeared on visual, a sleek black vessel that cut across the Lucky Break's bow with aggressive precision. Kevin yanked the controls, sending the freighter into a sharp dive that made the deck plates groan in protest. The hunter missed them by meters, its wake turbulence shaking the Lucky Break like a dog with a rat. "Lucky Break, this is UNSC Scout. We're engaging. Keep running." Behind him, Kevin saw the flashes of weapons fire, plasma bolts and kinetic rounds lighting up the darkness. The UNSC vessel was small, but it was fast and well-armed, and Voss clearly knew how to fly it. She weaved between the hunter ships, drawing their fire, giving Kevin precious seconds to open up the distance. But there were too many of them. For every hunter that peeled off to engage the UNSC ship, 2 more appeared on the sensors. The net was tightening. Kevin checked the navigation display. Still 20 minutes to the jump gate, 20 minutes of running, dodging, and praying. "We're not going to make it," he muttered. "Don't give up," Voss's voice crackled. "I've got an idea. There's a nebula 20 clicks off your port bow, dense enough to hide a ship your size. Get in there and go dark. They'll have to search visually, and that'll buy you time." Kevin adjusted course, aiming for the swirling cloud of gas and dust on the sensors. The nebula was a murky brown, the kind of place that ships avoided because it played hell with their sensors and could corrode their hull plating if they stayed too long. But right now, it was the only chance they had. The Lucky Break plunged into the nebula, and the world went brown. Visibility dropped to near zero, the viewports showing nothing but swirling gas. The sensors went haywire, spitting out garbage data that Kevin ignored. He killed the engines, killed the lights, killed everything except life support and the comms unit. Silence. The Lucky Break drifted through the nebula, a ghost in the dark. Duke had stopped shaking and was now lying flat on the deck, his head on his paws, his eyes watching Kevin with the kind of trust that made Kevin's chest ache. They waited. 10 minutes, 20. Half an hour. The comms crackled, Voss's voice barely audible through the static. "Lucky Break, this is UNSC. I think they've given up. Most of them have broken off and are heading back to the station. A few are still searching, but they're moving away from your position. Stay dark for another hour, then make your run for the jump gate. We'll keep patrolling. Copy that. Thanks, Voss. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. The bounty is still active, and now everyone knows you're out here. You're going to have to keep running until the UNSC can get the bounty rescinded. That could take weeks. Kevin leaned back in his chair, exhaustion pressing down on him like a physical weight. Weeks. Maybe longer. The Vaceri are serious about this. They've put a lot of money on the table. Hunters are coming from all over the galaxy. You're going to have to stay ahead of them. How am I supposed to do that in this rust bucket? One jump at a time. We'll help as much as we can, but you're going to need to be smart. No more scheduled routes, no more predictable patterns. You're a ghost now, Kevin. Start acting like one. The comms went silent. Kevin sat in the darkness of the cockpit, listening to the hum of the life support and the soft sound of Duke's breathing. The nebula swirled around them, hiding them from the hunters who were even now scouring the sector for a rusty freighter and an old dog. He thought about the Wreathen merchant, Zelthor, about the look of curiosity in his shifting colors, about the debt he'd mentioned, the debt Kevin would owe if he survived. That was a problem for another day. Right now, he had a dog to protect. Kevin reached down and scratched behind Duke's ears. The dog sighed contentedly and closed his eyes. We're going to be okay, buddy. We've got friends out there, and we've got each other. That's got to be enough. Duke's tail thumped once against the deck. They waited out the hour in silence. Then, Kevin restarted the engines, plotted a course for the jump gate, and eased the lucky break out of the nebula. The sensors were clear. The hunters had moved on, at least for now. The jump gate loomed ahead, a massive ring of metal and energy that would fling them across 100 light years in an instant. Kevin punched in the coordinates for neutral space, engaged the autopilot, and held his breath. The lucky break shot through the gate, and the universe turned inside out. When they emerged on the other side, the sensors showed nothing but empty space. No hunters, no warships, no danger. Just the cold, quiet dark between the stars. Kevin let out a long, slow breath. They'd made it, for now. He set a course for the nearest neutral station, programmed the autopilot, and finally let himself close his eyes. Duke was already snoring, dreaming of rabbits and treats and simpler times. Somewhere behind them, the hunters were regrouping. Somewhere ahead, new dangers were waiting. But right now, in this moment, they were safe. Kevin slept.